Welcome tonight. We have two meetings and a public hearing, so we're going to get started. First meeting on the docket is a meeting of the Cunningham Township Board. It's Monday, June 4th, 2018. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Trustees Ammons. Brown.
Here.
Hazen.
Here.
Jacobson.
Here.
Miller.
Here.
Roberts.
Here.
Wu.
Next up is minutes of the previous meeting. Two meetings of May 7th, 2018, which was a joint meeting, and then the regular meeting. Is there a motion for approval?
I'll motion to approve of that.
I'll second.
Moved by Dean, seconded by Jared. Any corrections? Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. That motion passes. Are there any additions to the agenda for the town board?
No.
Okay. Public participation. Anyone wish to address the Cunningham Town Board? Okay. Next up, committee to verify bills. Danielle?
So this month we have $42,930.78 in expenditures in the town fund and $45,845.42 in expenditures in the general assistance fund. The total is $88,776.20. Any questions?
Dennis?
Yeah, Danielle, probably not so much about the individual charges, but I see that we're assisting quite a few more people this month. Looks like it's been rising for a couple months. How are we standing as far as being able to provide help?
Well, so essentially, we are about $100,000 under budget in general assistance, and we are $22,000 over budget in homeless assistance. So in terms of our overall assistance programs, we're under budget, but essentially the balance between those two things, which we tried to rectify in the coming budget, we kind of over budgeted on one and under budgeted on the other. We do see an increase in both programs in terms of clients. We have seen a leveling off in terms of our walk-ins, and I expect to see a leveling off in terms of our general assistance here. I anticipate maybe 125 clients or so. 175 clients 4 years ago. Before Michelle Mayo became supervisor, that was the client role. And that's been that's kind of high on the consistency. It's been between 90 and 190, pretty consistently bouncing between those two numbers for many decades.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? We have a motion to approve the bills.
Yeah, I'll make the motion that we approve the town fund and the general assistance fund for the amounts provided.
I'll second.
Moved by Dennis, seconded by Jared. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. That motion passes. Reports of officers?
Okay, so I just have a brief report. It's on your desk here. We'll get into the budget a little bit later when we get to that section. Just wanted to let you know that we had the same number of walk-ins this month as last month, 124, which is substantial. General assistance participants are at 97. That's up from 83 last month. I've given you a breakdown basically on who is what, but roughly a third of our participants in general assistance are actively homeless. They do not receive homeless assistance. Folks who are typically chronically homeless, who don't have the ability to get into permanent housing, we have been steering them to general assistance. The average age is 48 years old, tends to be an older crowd. Homeless assistance participants, since the program started, we started November 17th. 178 Atlanta residents have been helped who were actively homeless with no place to go. That includes 74 households and 100 children. So I just wanted to point out that children are close, getting close to 60% of the population we're serving. It almost always is women with children who we're serving. Women make up about 75% of the adults served through the homeless assistance program. They are largely an invisible part of the homeless population in our community. And then I've broken down exactly what kinds of support they've received. I just also wanted to say we had a fantastic celebration of our new township garden yesterday afternoon, thanks to Urbana Free Library for helping us secure a lease on their property. We have, the kale is actually ready to eat, as is the Swiss chard, because that's what happens when you starts in a greenhouse. We had purchased food for 150 people, and we were out of food at the end. I think there was at least 100, maybe 125 folks who showed up. It was a really great mix of folks from all over the community. And there was a lot of energy to have at least monthly events in the garden, so you'll be hearing more about that shortly. And we did reach out to Learman Avenue Neighborhood Garden and have started to generate a really productive relationship. They've been helping to coach us and answer our questions. So I appreciate that advice. And I will, if you have any questions for me, go ahead, and then I'll pass it off to Wayne. Okay. Thank you. What's that? Okay, so Wayne doesn't have a report at this time. We'll
We'll move on to unfinished business. Is there any? Okay. New business?
So we pass. This is the GIS resolution. And it says graphics again.
All right, so the first resolution we have is Resolution T 2018-06 as 006R. It needs to be corrected to a resolution authorizing an agreement with the County of Champaign for Geographic Information System Services. Basically what this is for is the Township Assessor's Office routinely contracts with the Champaign County for GIS services. This is a service that we use on a regular basis in their office. The cost for this service is $450 for the year. The current contract expires June 30th, so this was extended out to June 30th of 2019. Any questions?
Bill?
So this was for an extension to use the web interface for their GIS or something?
Right, but we have a proprietary logon with proprietary layers.
Okay. And do we also use their data? I mean, the city pays a lot more than that, the $450, so it sounds like the township's just using that one application. They don't need all the layers that the city needs.
Right,
Okay. But that's all we pay for the GIS, is that $450 a year?
yes.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? Jared?
I'd like to make a motion.
Go ahead.
I'll move that we approve resolution number T-2018-06-006R, resolution authorizing agreement with the, what did you say the edit was?
Geographic Information Services.
Oh, yes, yes. With the County of Champaign for Geographic Information System Services, not Graphic Information Services as listed on the agenda.
I'll second.
Moved by Jared, seconded by Bill. Let's be the motion as corrected. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? That motion passes. Next up, Resolution T 2018-06-007R, resolution ascertaining prevailing rate of wages. Danielle.
This is an annual resolution that essentially sets the prevailing rate of wages. We have to do it each year. We do it in June. This might be familiar.
Is there a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to pass Resolution T 2018-06-007R, a resolution ascertaining the prevailing rate of wages, 2018.
I'll second it.
Moved by Dennis, seconded by Dean. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. That motion passes. Last item in new business is ordinance T 2018-06-002. This is an ordinance approving the annual budget and appropriation ordinance. I would say the action item tonight would be to designate it as a tentative budget and keep on file for final approval at the July 9th meeting.
Yeah, exactly. So, so when you get to the motion, you just don't want to pass the ordinance that's before you. It's to put it, the motion is to put it on file. I have given you an updated ordinance, just a few tweaks and numbers as we made some corrections before I sent you the budget before the weekend. So if you could just pass the printed budget that you have, and I will send a digital copy, so that is on the website as well, the printed. Yeah, and each person should have a copy of that. Exactly. So in terms of a budget presentation, there will be a public hearing in July. What I do want to do is just give you the highlights. I've been asked to keep it brief because I know you have a lot of things going on this evening, but I am going to hit my memo basically goes through, and I'm just going to hit a few of the things here that I think would also be important for the public to hear. So essentially, a few things to point out in this coming year's budget. The first is that we have budgeted $50,000 in the town fund for other grants. It's next to the consolidated social service funding. As you may know, you will see that the applications supporting homeless families were close to non-existent in the consolidated social service funding pool. So for example, Rosecrans did not ask for money for Time Center because it's anticipated that the Time Center will close and we'll lose that transitional shelter. We did not have anyone come forward asking for funds for transitional shelter for women. Courage Connection requested funding specifically for domestic violence, not for transitional shelter. That's because federal money for transitional shelter is eviscerated over the last 4 years. So that piece of the puzzle in consolidated social service funding is really important. You'll see in the report that Kelly will be giving to the council tonight that it makes up a big piece of the pie. But this year, in terms of applicants, it didn't. So what we have proposed is to set aside a portion of money to focus on a shelter for women with children, and that will also, and single women, and that will greatly reduce the impact on the homeless assistance. I will have further information about that shortly, but this, for the moment, it's simply the budget for that piece. I've set aside proposing $36,000 in rental assistance and eviction prevention. We estimate supporting 60 Urbana households with an average of about $600 spent per household. We've set aside $24,000 for emergency assistance. That's greatly reduced from what we paid in terms of the hotel voucher program. That's because we're looking to reduce the hotel voucher program and grow the shelter infrastructure. So the goal is basically to do one of these things where we have more shelter, fund more shelter, and less of the vouchers. And that was intentional. The voucher program has allowed us to count the need on a monthly basis and get a really good sense of what is out there. And that helps us design our grants programs. As I mentioned last year, the personal allowance amount for GA has not kept up with inflation. It actually used to be enough to actually pay for rent in Urbana. I can pull historical statistics. Clearly, you cannot pay for rent with $265 a month unless you have several people in your bedroom. So what we have done is at least tried to go up this year to $275 from $265, and it's actually $10 less than what is proposed at the City of Champaign Township. I just budget-wise could not get it up to $285 with the number of folks I anticipate on the rolls. Our service provision has grown significantly, and we anticipate that we'll serve about 350 people by the close of this fiscal year and about 500 people next year. I'll jump to income. We've seen, as we are anticipating, at least six-fold increase in interest rate payments. We've already seen our interest jump significantly. I've negotiated with Busey Bank interest rate that's 10 times the interest rate we had before. So we are seeing some revenue from that. I'm launching an angel fund with input from the township officials of Illinois. I've had many people, including this weekend, try to donate money to the township. We really would like to take their money because we could help support people directly with services. I just don't have an angel fund set up for that, and so in the new year I will. We are anticipating an additional income from Social Security payments, reimbursements, because we'll be using the SOAR process. And so I showed a modest increase, and I think we could probably do better, and then going into the next year, really see to decrease the number of folks on general assistance and increase the reimbursements we're receiving. A few administrative items. In consultation with our accountant, we have budgeted for a capital fund. The township has not had a capital fund. It's best practices that we do. I am proposing that we move $150,000 from the town fund into that fund. It could be used for facility or vehicle replacement or other capital needs. And according to our accountant, by vote of the town board, in a pinch, we could have access to those funds. So the township has an unfunded liability in its IMRF, which is our retirement fund, of just over $176,000. That's actually down from what it had been. Our percentage has been pretty high the last few years. It used to be up to about $350,000. I talked with the IMRF, and I think it makes sense to do a $50,000 contribution to lower our liability this next year. That'll actually mean savings in calendar year 2020 for us. And so it kind of levels off because our percentage that we're paying into IMRF is over 13% at this point, so trying to get that down. I think that's the top highlights I'd like to focus on. I tried to do a different format this year that's clean and lets you look fund by fund. In a simple manner, so hopefully it's easy to parse. As you'll see, we still have the set aside for the Carl and Presence property tax refunds if we were to lose in those property tax cases. And I think probably it makes sense for if Wayne made his comments, and then if you had any questions, we could answer your questions.
So in the spirit of keeping it brief, I'll just go along the major differences for next year, next fiscal year. On the personnel side, the increase in IMRF, even though there's a decrease in payroll, comes from us, what Daniel mentioned about putting extra money toward our IMRF to reduce our unfunded liability. I've also proposed that we increase training and travel. There's a memo in your budget packet from me regarding that specifically. Training is very important to me. I think you get better results from a better trained staff. Unfortunately, the assessment classes are not held in Champaign County. That's something that I hope to work on changing, get some more business in the town. But unfortunately, with more classes, you have more travel. Classes tend to be held in places like Springfield, Peoria, Bloomington, Rockford, Naperville, and Chicago, and that's just for the rest of the year. So there will be increases in travel along with increases in training. As far as the increase in computer services and computer software maintenance and computer software, that is happening because we want to get our systems current. Several of our assessment programs are not up to date. I want to bring those up to date, and then moving forward, hopefully get into a paperless property record card system, or at the very least, even if we have to keep the paper, putting our property record card system online. I believe that could lead to further staff savings in the future, but we have to take the steps now. We have to invest now to save later. Also, I think it's better service to the taxpayers if they can just click and find out how their property assessment came to be. Oh, and then dues and subscriptions. That increase is due to, so that goes along with the training. That has to do with the office getting a membership into the International Association of Assessing Officers. That organization is the premier source of education for assessors nationwide.
Any questions for Wayne or Danielle? Start with Wayne. Bill.
Yeah, on the training, travel, and dues and subscriptions, I looked up the association, the International Association. It costs $210 a year per person to join that. So you're asking for $2,500 more.
Right. So
for dues and subscriptions.
It's not just for IAO. We have the assessors section of TOI that comes up every other year, and that's going to be an increase of this year. I don't have it in front of me, but it's this time. It's this fiscal year. It'll be time to pay. The rest of, GIS, that subscription comes out of dues and subscriptions.
And that comes out every year, yeah.
Yeah, it comes out every year.
And then as far as the travel goes,
Also, Marshall and Swift, which is our cost manual for commercial property, comes out of that particular fund as well.
okay. As far as the training and travel goes, are you currently CIAO? Do you currently?
I am.
You have that. So you don't need to do these 75 hours or whatever, 120 hours. You just need to do
I just need to do continuing
the 30
education.
30 a year. Is that your minimum?
Right.
So that's basically two-day conferences.
Yes,
Okay. And your deputy, have you hired a deputy yet?
not yet.
But the job description for that said they also had to be CIAO
They would.
or equivalent?
Right, so not necessarily right away, but we'd have to pay to train.
Okay. I guess I think that increase is too high, going from $4,000 a year to $12,000 a year for training and $250 a year to $8,000 a year for travel. I think two-day conferences you could probably do for, probably $3,000 or $4,000 at the most, even staying overnight. If they're in state, probably less than that. So I don't know if we should try to make changes tonight, or if we should just change that in July.
Well, so the office is budgeted for myself and 3 other staff. Each class, to train someone that does not have a CIAO, each class, there are 6 required classes. Each class for the IPAI is about $300, 2.5 days.
And how much is it for IDOR?
The IDOR those classes are free. So when you're training someone, only 2 of the 6 classes required can be Illinois Department of Revenue classes. Those are typically held either in Springfield or other parts. Right now, the only classes in Springfield are home study courses right now for the rest of the year. There are classes in Rockford, Naperville, and Peoria off the top of my head. So those would still incur travel expenses.
Okay, thank you.
Just to give you, round trip to Springfield for mileage is about $100. Yes, round trip to Springfield is about $100 each way. Round trip to Chicago is $137. To Rockford, where one of the classes is $205. That's just at the standard IRS mileage rate. That doesn't include hotel or any type of per diem. I mean, the cost they add up pretty quickly.
Yeah, that's just more than we have for training and travel for any other staff, police chief, police officers, fire officers. That's the city, of course, not the township. But just by comparison, that just is really kind of high, I thought. If anything, so I don't know, training and travel, I don't know how you divide those out. I suppose training is like conference registrations and course fees.
Course fees.
I guess another option would be to separate it out to assessor and staff, have 2 different line items. That's what we do with the city budget. But that's just my opinion, so we'll see.
Eric?
Wayne, I think it would be very helpful if we could receive a little calculation sheet that was used or appropriate to be used for calculating the training and the travel items, so that we could. I understand what you're saying about things adding up and this costs this and this costs this, but I'd really like to see those components
Broken out by
broken out so that we can really see the logic behind the
I can do it in the
bottom
morning.
line numbers. That would be great.
I can do it in the morning. That's not a problem.
Great. Any other questions? Okay. Any questions for Danielle? Jared?
I'll make a motion.
Okay, this would be a motion to designate the tentative budget designate this as the tentative budget and file it for final approval.
Okay, so I'm gonna, and I do that through the ordinance, right? Doesn't matter. Yeah, so I will make a motion that we approve this as a tentative budget and put it up for file to be voted on in the July Township meeting.
I'll second it.
Moved by Jared, seconded by Dean. Any further discussion? Okay, do we need all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, that motion passes. This will go on file. There's no further business before this board. The meeting is adjourned.